A chance meeting. The Seattle rain drummed against the windows of Seaward Cafe, creating a soothing backdrop to the quiet hum of conversation inside. Marcus Chen stared into his cooling cup of black coffee, his reflection distorted in the dark liquid. At 34, he had everything money could buy, a tech empire valued at billions, a modernist mansion overlooking Puget Sound, and a name that opened doors throughout the business world. Yet he sat alone, wearing a simple gray hoodie and jeans, savoring his anonymity. 3 years of relentless work building Horizon Technologies had left him wealthy beyond imagination, but hollowed from within. His last meaningful relationship had ended when Jessica couldn't handle his obsessive work schedule, claiming he loved his algorithms more than people. Perhaps she was right. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Marcus looked up to find a woman gesturing to the chair across from him, her arms filled with colorful folders and a laptop bag threatening to spill its contents. The cafe had filled while he was lost in thought, every table now occupied except for the empty chairs at his own. "Please," he said, clearing his throat from disuse. "It's all yours." "Thanks, you're a lifesaver," she sighed, dropping her materials onto the table with practiced chaos. "I promised myself I wouldn't work today, but the ocean waits for no one." Something about her directness made Marcus sit up straighter. She had warm brown skin, curly black hair pulled into a messy bun, and the kind of smile that seemed immune to pretense. Her eyes, a deep amber, crinkled slightly at the corners as she organized her papers. "I'm Sophia," she offered, extending her hand across the table. "Sophia James?" "Marcus," he replied simply, accepting her handshake. Her fingers were strong and slightly calloused, working hands so different from the manicured executives he usually encountered. "Just Marcus? Like Madonna or Cher?" she teased, raising an eyebrow. He found himself smiling, a genuine smile that felt foreign on his face. "For today, yes." Sophia's laptop screen illuminated with images of coral reefs and marine diagrams. "You're not bothered by ocean talk, are you? I've got a workshop for kids tomorrow, and I'm behind on my preparations." "Marine biology?" he guessed. "Among other things," she nodded, taking a sip from her chai latte. "I run educational programs through the Pacific Conservation Institute, mostly teaching kids about marine ecosystems before humans destroy them all." The passion in her voice caught him off guard. Most people in his circle spoke with calculated enthusiasm, always measuring the value of their words. Sophia spoke as if the fate of the oceans personally mattered to her. "That sounds more meaningful than what most people do," he offered. She tilted her head, studying him. "And what does Marcus without a last name do?" He hesitated. "Technology. Nothing particularly exciting." "Everything's exciting if you're passionate about it," she countered. "Though I admit I'm a dinosaur with tech. My students laugh at how long it takes me to figure out new apps." For the next hour, Marcus found himself engaged in conversation without once checking his phone. Sophia described her work with underprivileged children, her eyes lighting up as she explained how a girl from last summer's program had just won a science scholarship. Marcus listened, offering occasional questions, careful to steer the conversation away from specifics about himself. "I should let you finish your work," he finally said, noticing the time. Sophia smiled, gathering her materials. This was nice. Sometimes talking to a stranger is exactly what you need to reset your perspective. As she stood to leave, she paused. "I'm here most Sundays working on my lesson plans." The company was refreshing. After she left, Marcus remained at the table, watching raindrops race down the window pane. For the first time in years, the constant noise in his head, market projections, competitor analyses, development deadlines, had quieted. In its place was something simple, the memory of genuine conversation. He looked down at his phone, with its 50 unread messages and 6 missed calls from his executive team. Then he looked at the empty chair where Sophia had sat. Next Sunday seemed very far away. Hidden identities. The following Sunday, Marcus arrived at Seaward Cafe an hour earlier than the previous week. He chose the same table, ordered a black coffee, and opened a book he wouldn't read. His eyes kept drifting to the entrance, wondering if Sophia's appearance had been a one-time coincidence. When she finally pushed through the door at 3:15, her hair damp from the light rain, Marcus felt an unexpected lightness in his chest. She spotted him immediately, her face brightening with recognition. "The mysterious Marcus," she said, approaching his table. "I wasn't sure you'd be here." "I had some thinking to do," he replied honestly. This seemed like a good place for it. Over the next few weeks, their Sunday meetings became a ritual. Sophia would arrive with her work, Marcus with his carefully constructed persona of a mid-level software developer at a small firm. Each time, he revealed more genuine parts of himself while omitting the details that would expose his identity. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was being more honest with this stranger than with people he'd known for years. "Do you believe people can really change?" Sophia asked one rainy afternoon, pushing aside her laptop. She'd been unusually quiet that day. Marcus considered the question carefully. "I think people can evolve when something meaningful enough happens to them." Sophia nodded thoughtfully. "I had a student drop out of my program today. Brilliant kid. Could identify 50 species of fish at 13 years old. His family can't afford the bus fare anymore." She sighed. "Sometimes I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle against systems too big to change." Marcus felt a familiar tug, the impulse to solve problems with money. It would be so easy to write a check that would fund her entire program for years, but that would mean revealing who he was, and he wasn't ready to lose this sanctuary of normalcy. "What if you had unlimited resources?" he asked carefully. "What would you do differently?" Sophia's eyes lit up. "Everything! I'd create a scholarship program for transportation, build a proper marine lab instead of using borrowed equipment, take the kids on actual research vessels instead of just showing them pictures." She laughed self-consciously. "Sorry, I get carried away sometimes." "Don't apologize for passion," Marcus said softly. "It's rare." The following week, Sophia invited him to observe one of her workshops at the community center near the harbor. Marcus agreed, knowing the risk of being recognized increased outside the quiet cafe, but unable to refuse her genuine excitement. The workshop space was modest, a room with mismatched chairs, worn tables, and 15 children ranging from 8 to 15 years old. Their faces glowed with attention as Sophia explained how coral polyps built reef systems. Marcus sat in the back, watching her transform scientific concepts into adventures that captivated even the most restless kids. "And who are you?" asked a small girl with braided hair, approaching Marcus during the break. "I'm Marcus, a friend of Miss Sophia's. Are you her boyfriend?" the girl asked with the directness only children possess. Before he could respond, Sophia appeared beside them. "Zara, this is my friend who knows about computers. Remember I told you we needed help with our virtual reef project?" The girl nodded seriously before running off to join her friends. "Sorry about that," Sophia said, her cheeks slightly flushed. "Kids and boundaries, not always compatible." "It's refreshing, actually," Marcus replied. "Most people I interact with have too many filters." After the workshop, they walked along the harbor as evening settled over the water. Street lamps created golden pools of light on the wet pavement, and the scent of salt and seaweed hung in the air. "Thank you for coming," Sophia said. "It's not exactly high-tech or glamorous, but it's important," Marcus interrupted. "What you're doing matters." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "You know what's strange? I've told you more about myself than people I've known for years, but I still know almost nothing about you." Marcus tensed slightly. "What do you want to know? Who are you when you're not being mysterious at cafes?" Her eyes held his, curious but kind. For a moment, Marcus considered telling her everything, about Horizon Technologies, the pressure of thousands of employees depending on his decisions, the isolation of leadership. Instead, he offered another piece of truth. "I'm someone who hasn't felt like himself in a very long time. Until recently." Sophia studied him in the dim light, then nodded slowly. "Well, whoever you are, Marcus no last name, I'm glad you sat at that table." When their hands brushed as they continued walking, neither pulled away. The warmth of her fingers against his felt more real than any business contract he'd signed in years. That night, Marcus made a decision. He would help Sophia's program anonymously, It wouldn't be dishonest, he reasoned, just a separation of worlds that weren't ready to collide. Worlds colliding. The Pacific Conservation Institute's annual fundraiser was modest by charity standards, a gathering of local supporters, marine science enthusiasts, and parents of program participants at the Seattle Aquarium. Sophia had mentioned it casually during one of their Sunday meetings, never explicitly inviting Marcus, but expressing how crucial the event was for the coming year's funding. Marcus arrived late, having spent the afternoon in emergency meetings with his board of directors. The news had just broken that Horizon Technologies was developing revolutionary desalination technology, sending their stock soaring. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the announcement. The aquarium's blue light cast ethereal shadows as he moved through the crowd. He spotted Sophia immediately. She wore a simple teal dress that caught the refracted light from the surrounding tanks. She was speaking animatedly to a small group, her hands gesturing to emphasize points about ocean conservation. He kept his distance, observing her in this element, confident, passionate, surrounded by people who shared her vision. In this moment, their separate worlds felt impossibly far apart. The Institute's director took the small stage, tapping on a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your support of our humble organization. As you know, we've been struggling to expand our youth programs due to budget constraints. Sophia stood to the side, smiling encouragingly at her colleague. However, the director continued, I'm thrilled to announce we've received an anonymous donation of $5 million specifically earmarked for expanding our educational initiatives and establishing a scholarship fund for underprivileged students interested in marine sciences. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Marcus felt a surge of satisfaction watching her reaction from across the room. The director went on. The donor has requested the fund be named the Zara Washington Memorial Scholarship, after one of our youngest and most enthusiastic participants, who sadly lost her battle with leukemia last year. Marcus watched as tears filled Sophia's eyes. He hadn't known about Zara's passing. It was pure coincidence he'd used the name. The weight of what this meant to Sophia suddenly hit him. This wasn't just about impressing her with money. He'd inadvertently touched something deeply personal. As the crowd buzzed with excitement, a reporter from the Seattle Tribune approached the director, camera crew in tow. Is there any indication who the anonymous donor might be? $5 million is significant. There aren't many in Seattle who could make such a contribution. The director shook her head. The donor wishes to remain anonymous, and we respect that privacy. But Marcus knew how quickly such privacy could dissolve in the age of digital connections. He should have left then, disappeared before anyone made the connection. Instead, he moved closer to Sophia, drawn by the joy radiating from her. Can you believe it? She said when she spotted him, grabbing his arm. This changes everything. We can help so many more kids get proper equipment. She stopped suddenly, studying his face. Wait, did you know about this? Before he could answer, the reporter's voice cut through their moment. Mr. Chen? Marcus Chen of Horizon Technologies? What brings you to this event? Sophia's hand dropped from his arm as if burned. Her expression shifted from confusion to realization to something harder to read. Mr. Chen has been a supporter of environmental initiatives throughout the Pacific Northwest, the director interjected smoothly, approaching them. We're honored to have him here tonight. The cameras turned toward Marcus, catching Sophia's stunned expression beside him. He could see the connections forming in her mind, pieces falling into place, his vague answers, his interest in her program, the sudden anonymous donation. If you'll excuse me, Sophia said quietly, turning away from the cameras and walking rapidly toward the exit. Marcus wanted to follow immediately, but the reporters surrounded him with questions about Horizon's environmental initiatives and whether he was the anonymous donor. By the time he extracted himself, Sophia was nowhere to be found. Outside the aquarium, rain fell in heavy sheets. Marcus searched the nearby streets but saw no sign of her. His phone buzzed with a text message from a number he'd come to look forward to seeing on his screen. "All this time," Sophia had written, "you let me believe you were someone you're not. Was any of it real? Or was I just an interesting charity case for a bored billionaire?" Marcus stared at the screen, raindrops blurring the words. How could he explain that his deception had been an attempt to preserve the only genuine connection he'd found in years? That for the first time someone had seen him, not his money, not his company, not his power. "Sophia," he typed, "please let me explain. Everything I told you about myself was true. The only thing I hid was my last name." The response came quickly. "Your last name isn't just a name. It's a world you chose to hide from me while knowing everything about mine. Don't contact me again." Marcus stood in the rain, watching the message light fade from his screen, feeling the careful separation between his worlds collapse entirely. Adrift and searching. 3 weeks passed without a word from Sophia. Marcus returned to Seaward Cafe every Sunday, sitting at their usual table until closing time, but she never appeared. Her absence created a void that his return to 60-hour work weeks couldn't fill. "You look terrible," remarked Diana, his chief operations officer, during their weekly strategy meeting. "When was the last time you slept?" Marcus waved off her concern. "I'm fine. Let's focus on the Jakarta expansion." But he wasn't fine. Each day blurred into the next as he moved mechanically through his obligations. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd built Horizon Technologies into an empire by understanding connections, by seeing patterns others missed. Yet he'd failed to understand the most basic human connection. Trust had to be earned, not purchased. After another sleepless night, Marcus found himself driving to the community center where Sophia taught her marine workshops. He parked across the street, watching children filter into the building, hoping for a glimpse of her. When she emerged from her car carrying a stack of blue folders, he felt his heart quicken. She looked different. Her usual vibrant energy dimmed, her movements more measured. Had he caused that change? The thought made him sink lower in his seat, ashamed of his surveillance. This wasn't how he wanted to fix things. That evening, Marcus sat alone in his glass-walled office overlooking the Seattle skyline, contemplating what he'd lost. On his desk sat the latest acquisition proposal, a struggling marine research facility that his team suggested buying for its valuable waterfront property. Something about the facility's name nagged at his memory. He opened his laptop and searched through his text history with Sophia. There it was. She had mentioned this exact research center months ago, lamenting that it might close due to funding issues. "Some of the most important work on coral restoration happens there," she had written, "but science without profit margins is always vulnerable." For the first time in weeks, Marcus felt a clarity of purpose. He canceled the acquisition and instead directed his foundation to provide an endowment to the research center with one condition. They would establish a comprehensive education department open to all students, regardless of economic background. It wasn't about impressing Sophia anymore. It was about honoring what she had shown him, that wealth without purpose was meaningless, that connection required honesty, not grand gestures. Meanwhile, across the city, Sophia sat on her apartment balcony, staring at the text message she'd typed but hadn't sent. "I miss our conversations." Her finger hovered over the send button before she deleted it entirely. Her colleague Mira set a glass of wine beside her. "Still thinking about Mr. Billionaire?" "His name is Marcus," Sophia corrected automatically, then sighed. "And no. I'm thinking about how easily I trusted someone without really knowing them." "Did you ever consider that maybe you did know him?" Mira asked. "That perhaps the man at the cafe was more authentic than the CEO everyone else sees?" Sophia had considered it, countless times. Every detail of their conversations replayed in her mind. Had there been signs she missed? Moments of dishonesty? Or had she simply met a man who, for whatever reason, wanted to be known for himself rather than his fortune? It doesn't matter, Sophia insisted. He lied by omission for months. And yet, Mira observed, you're still wearing the sea glass necklace he gave you. Sophia's hand moved unconsciously to the smooth blue-green pendant at her throat, a simple gift Marcus had presented after she'd mentioned her grandmother collecting sea glass. It matches your spirit, he'd said, shaped by pressure but still catching the light. That night, Sophia couldn't sleep. She opened her laptop and searched for information about Marcus Chen, something she'd deliberately avoided doing since the fundraiser. Articles described his business acumen, his technological innovations, his growing emphasis on environmental sustainability. Recent headlines announced Horizon's support of marine research and education initiatives. Was this his way of reaching out, or simply guilt manifesting as philanthropy? Tides of change. The Sunday morning dawned clear and crisp, unusual for Seattle in November. Sophia arrived at Seaward Cafe earlier than she'd planned, her nerves making sleep impossible. She chose a different table, not their usual spot by the window, but one near the back wall that offered a view of the entire space. At precisely 3:00 p.m., the time they'd normally meet, the door opened and Marcus entered. He wore the same nondescript hoodie from their first encounter, his eyes scanning the room until they found her. The relief on his face was unmistakable, quickly followed by uncertainty as he noticed her changed location. Sophia nodded slightly, giving him permission to approach. "Thank you for coming," he said, remaining standing beside her table. "I wasn't sure you would." "Neither was I," she admitted. "Please, sit." He placed a small wooden box on the table between them. "Before anything else, I want you to have this. Whether you decide to hear me out or not." Sophia hesitated before opening it. Inside lay an intricately detailed coral reef diorama, each tiny organism rendered with scientific accuracy. Nestled among the corals was a miniature figure, a diver with curly hair suspended in a moment of discovery. "You made this?" she asked, touching the delicate structures. "I learned 3D modeling in college," he explained. "It was therapeutic designing this. Reminded me why I started working with technology in the first place, to build things that matter." Sophia closed the box gently. "Marcus, why did you lie to me?" He took a deep breath. 6 years ago, I created an algorithm that changed how data centers operate. Suddenly, I wasn't just Marcus Chen, the awkward programmer. I was worth billions. People who had ignored me were suddenly my best friends. Women who wouldn't have glanced my way were interested in relationships. He looked down at his hands. "When we met, I was so tired of being valued for my bank account instead of myself." "So you decided to lie?" "I decided to omit," he corrected. "Everything I told you about my thoughts, my feelings, my past, it was all true. I just didn't tell you my last name or exact job title." "Those aren't small details when your last name is on the side of buildings," Sophia countered, though her tone had softened. "I know that now," Marcus acknowledged. "I should have told you after the first few weeks, when I realized you were someone I wanted in my life. But the longer I waited, the harder it became." He met her gaze directly. "I was afraid of losing the one person who saw me as just Marcus." Outside, the afternoon light caught the waves in the distance, turning them gold. Inside, the quiet hum of the cafe provided a cocoon of privacy around their table. "The donation," Sophia said finally. "Was that to impress me?" Marcus shook his head. "It was because you helped me see value beyond profit margins. Your passion for those kids, for the ocean, it made me reassess what I was doing with my resources." He paused. "Though I admit, seeing your reaction was a bonus I hoped for." A small smile touched Sophia's lips despite herself. "And the research center endowment? Was that also for me?" Surprise flickered across his face. "You heard about that? It's been all over the marine science community," she explained. "The mysterious benefactor who saved Pacific Coast research from becoming luxury condos." "That wasn't about impressing you," Marcus said quietly. "That was about becoming someone worthy of the person you thought I was." The weight of his words hung between them. Sophia studied him, not the billionaire CEO from magazine covers, but the man who had sat across from her Sunday after Sunday, listening to her dreams and frustrations with genuine interest. "I've missed our talks," she admitted finally. "I've missed you," he replied simply. Sophia reached across the table, her fingers resting lightly on his. "I'm still angry about the deception." "I understand. And if," she emphasized the word, "we try to rebuild whatever this is between us, it has to be with complete honesty." Hope flickered in his eyes. "Does that mean you're willing to try?" Sophia glanced at the coral reef model, at the tiny diver suspended in exploration. "I think," she said carefully, "that genuine connections are rare enough to be worth fighting for, even when they're complicated." Marcus turned his palm upward, his fingers intertwining with hers. "I'd like to properly introduce myself," he said with the hint of a smile. "I'm Marcus Chen. I build things for a living. I'm terrible at maintaining houseplants. And meeting you changed everything." Sophia laughed softly, the sound breaking the last of the tension between them. "I'm Sophia James. I save oceans, teach children, and apparently have a complicated relationship with a tech CEO." As evenings settled over Seattle, they remained at the cafe, rebuilding their connection one honest conversation at a time. Marcus spoke about the pressures of leadership, the loneliness of success. Sophia shared her frustrations with funding cuts, her dreams for expanding marine education to underserved communities. Later, they walked along the waterfront, the lights of the city reflecting in the harbor. When Marcus tentatively placed his arm around her shoulders, Sophia leaned into his embrace. "You know," she said, looking up at the stars emerging in the darkening sky, "in marine ecosystems, the most resilient species are those that form symbiotic relationships, different organisms supporting each other through changing conditions." Marcus smiled, understanding her meaning. "And those relationships only work with complete transparency?" "Exactly," she nodded, her head resting against his shoulder. "No hidden identities, no protective barriers." As they reached the end of the pier, Marcus turned to face her, framed by the city lights behind him. "I can't promise I won't make mistakes," he said, "but I can promise that from now on you'll always know exactly who you're dealing with." Sophia reached up, her hand gently touching his face. That's all anyone can really ask for. When their lips met, it wasn't a beginning erasing their complicated past, but rather an acknowledgement of it, a promise that honesty, however difficult, was the foundation they would build upon. The tide turned beneath the pier, water flowing outward only to return again, changed but constant. Above, two figures remained embraced against the evening chill, no longer a billionaire and a marine biologist, but simply Marcus and Sophia, two people who had found something rare in a world of superficial connections, the courage to be seen for who they truly were.